Hey, welcome to Imagine BL Story. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really encourages my work and helps me bring you more stories. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy today's story. So, you know that awkward moment when you see your boss outside of work? Now multiply that by 1,000, then add a dating app filter. Because I just found my terrifyingly serious CEO on a dating app. This is not a drill, people. It started on a Monday. After a hectic day at work, I sprawled on my couch after calling to check on my mom in the hospital, eating instant noodles, wondering if this was what adulthood was supposed to feel like. Tired, underpaid, and mildly dead inside. Out of boredom or desperation, I opened a dating app. Swipe left again. One profile looked like a pyramid scheme. Another looked like a midlife crisis. Then I stopped. My thumb froze on the screen, because the next face I saw was too familiar. Mr. Lee, my boss, on a dating app. Username, Evening Run. Bio, looking for someone who can keep up, mentally and emotionally. For a full 5 seconds, I just stared, convinced I was hallucinating from MSG poisoning. I blinked, looked again. Nope, it was definitely him. Same sharp jaw, same eyes that had probably judged my entire existence since I joined the company. I dropped my phone on my chest, groaning. Okay, maybe it's just a look-alike, I told myself. There are plenty of emotionally constipated men with perfect hair. But the more I looked, the more it was undeniably him. Then my thumb slipped. Swipe. And before my brain could process it, my phone buzzed. It's a match. I froze, blinked, and immediately regretted every life choice that led to this moment. Then, as if the universe wasn't done humiliating me, a message appeared. Evening Run. You shouldn't swipe right on your boss. I stared at it, heart racing, then typed before I could think better of it. Me. You shouldn't be on here if you're someone's boss. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then nothing. I tossed my phone onto the couch and buried my face in a pillow. Tomorrow was going to be the longest workday of my life. The second I stepped into the building the next morning, my stomach tried to crawl back out. Every click of heels on the marble floor, every polished reflection, reminded me that the man I'd accidentally matched with last night wasn't just some stranger. He was Lee Taehan, CEO of L&J Group, my boss, and I'd seen his dating profile. Worse, I'd matched with him. Even worse, I'd replied. I passed the reception desk, trying to look normal even though my brain was replaying his profile like a cursed slideshow. Unbuttoned collar, rolled up sleeves, the line that said, likes. Black coffee, running, quiet weekends. Quiet weekends, sure. Try quietly matching with your secretary. The day crawled. Every time I sent him an email, I hesitated. Every time he called the secretary's office for a file, I could hear that calm, deep voice on the line and wanted to evaporate into the carpet. I was so on edge like a person sitting on a time bomb that I spilled my coffee. Twice. Dropped my pen during the meeting. Called him boss by accident when handing over a document. He paused, just long enough for my soul to leave my body. Then said evenly, "Thank you, Mr. Park." Smooth, civil, completely professional. Except his eyes held mine a second too long. And in that tiny pause, I knew one thing for sure. Whatever this was between us, it wasn't over. By 7, I thought I'd survived. He hadn't said a word about it. I made it home, ate ramen again, and told myself it was fine, totally fine. Then, close to midnight, my phone buzzed. At Evening Run, you handled yourself well today. I blinked at the message, heart skipping a beat. What did that even mean? Was he acknowledging it? Testing me? Flirting? After typing and deleting 5 drafts, I finally sent. Me. I think you're confusing me with someone else. At Evening Run, I don't think so. I could almost hear his tone through the words. Calm, precise, unshakable. I typed, you really shouldn't be doing this. Deleted it. Typed, are you serious? Deleted that too. What finally went through was, me. What exactly are you doing, sir? At Evening Run, testing something. Me and? At Evening Run, it's working. I exhaled, sinking deeper into the couch, equal parts horrified and curious. Me, you do realize I work for you, right? At Evening Run, of course, Jitae. You're efficient, smart, loyal, and I like how you argue. That last line hit like a pulse in my throat. Me, you shouldn't say things like that, sir. At Evening Run, don't call me sir here. We're not in the office. Call me Taehan. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I didn't. I just watched the typing bubble fade in and out until it disappeared completely. The next morning, I still didn't know whether to show up for work or move to another country. But if there's one thing I've learned about working under Lee Taehan, it's that he is as persistent as they come. So persistent that I fell into a nightly routine of him messaging me like we've been close friends for some time and me humoring him like he is someone else and not my CEO boss. At work, Mr. Lee was still the same cold, impossibly composed CEO everyone admired and feared. But at night, on that app, he was someone else entirely, quieter, warmer, even a little teasing. He'd message first, always. Sometimes it was work-related, you handled that report well today. Sometimes something random. Do you always eat ramen that late? And sometimes it was nothing more than a simple still awake. That came in long after midnight. I told myself not to respond. I always did anyway. Somehow, between those messages, the walls started to crack. He told me he liked running at night because it was the only time he could breathe. He used to play the piano before business took over. That he hated being called boss. When I teased that no one at work would believe he could be this human, he replied, "Maybe I only am with you." I didn't know how to take that. Maybe I didn't want to. Because at the office, people loved to talk about him, his supposed dating life, the kind of women they thought he liked. Mina swore he was seeing a model. Yoonji insisted it was an older businesswoman. Then someone mentioned an actress. I laughed with them, pretending not to know better. Pretending I hadn't seen his profile on a gay dating app. Pretending I hadn't matched with him. That night, curiosity got the best of me. I sent a message. "People are saying you have a type. Want to confirm or deny?" He read it instantly. I could almost picture him, sitting somewhere in his perfect apartment, lips pressed together as he typed. Then his reply came through. "I do have a type." I hesitated, then asked, "Really? Who's your type?" The answer came before I could blink. "You." My stomach twisted. I stared at the screen, every muscle in my body locking up. I didn't respond, just turned off my phone. Like that would erase what I'd seen. When I turned it back on the next morning, 2 messages were waiting for me. "Don't worry." I meant that respectfully. And a second, shorter one that hit harder than it should have. Still true, though. After that, he got bolder. Started small, the way he said my name. Not clipped or professional, just softer. Then he began asking for my opinion in meetings, before the senior secretaries or even his PA. When someone else offered to bring him coffee, he'd just say, "I'll take it from Park." No one questioned it, but they noticed. By Friday, Mina had decided I was his favorite. "Please," I told her. "He probably doesn't even know my full name, right?" she said. "That's why he stared at you for 5 whole seconds in the elevator." My skin still tingles. I laughed it off, but she wasn't wrong. Something had shifted. It became clear on Tuesday when his PA called in sick. Just before lunch, his voice cut through the quiet office. "Park." Every head turned. "Yes, sir? You're coming with me to the client lunch. The documents are on my desk." No explanation, no room to argue. But when we arrived, there were no clients. No staff. Just 2 menus and a table by the window. "This isn't a client lunch," I said. He looked up for the first time. "No, it's not." He ordered for both of us, calm as if this was the most normal thing in the world. I tried to act the same. Pretend it was a mentorship, or networking, or anything other than what it felt like. Halfway through, he asked how long I'd worked at L&J. "Almost 2 years," I said. "You started as an intern?" "Yes. Top of your class." I frowned. "Sir, why are you—" "I read your file," he interrupted, eyes steady. "And I've been watching you since your first month." I froze. "Watching me?" "In the professional sense," he said, then added quietly, "At first." The fork in my hand stilled. He went on, voice low. "You're the only one who looks me in the eye. Everyone else folds." "That's because you're the CEO?" I muttered. He smiled faintly. "Or because I intimidate them. But you—" His gaze didn't waver. "You stand your ground even when you're terrified." The air changed. My pulse jumped. "Sir." "Taehan," he said. "Call me that. When we're alone." I shook my head. "Why are we here?" He leaned back, studying me. Then, like he was stating a fact, he said, "Because I'm interested in you." My brain short-circuited. "You what?" "I like you," he said simply. I thought that was obvious by now. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. I mumbled something about needing the restroom and practically ran. In the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. Pale, wide-eyed. somewhere between disbelief and panic. Guys like Lee Taehan didn't like guys like me. I was the scholarship kid from a small town who got lucky, the one still paying off loans, praying his mom's hospital bills cleared every month. My whole life was built on staying professional, staying invisible. And him? He was a headline. The youngest CEO in the company's history. Polished, brilliant, terrifying. We existed in different worlds. I splashed cold water on my face and told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe he was bored. Maybe it was a test. But the look in his eyes back there had been anything but casual. When I went back, he was waiting, calm, patient. I sat down, still reeling. "You don't have to give me an answer tonight," he said softly, and somehow that made it worse, because it meant he was serious. I nodded. Barely. He smiled once, slow and quiet. "Good," he said. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was dangerous. When I came back from that so-called business lunch, Mina and Jean He were already waiting by the secretary's desk like two gossip columnists who'd smelled a scandal brewing. They pounced the moment I sat down. Mina wanted to know every detail. Jean He was scandalized that I didn't take pictures, and both of them seemed genuinely offended when I said lunch was fine. They didn't need to know it wasn't really business. It was a confession, one I didn't know how to process. That night, he texted me. Not through the dating app, through my actual phone. He thanked me for the lunch, said it wasn't work, that he only did that when it's me. I stared at the message for minutes, reading it over and over, trying to understand what he meant by "when it's you." After that, everything shifted quietly. He started calling me into his office more often, sometimes for real reasons, sometimes for things that could have been handled with a short email. He'd ask about lunch preferences or call me in when everyone else was gone. Once, he even canceled a client dinner and told me to join him instead. It was all still professional on the surface, but it never really was. The air between us kept changing, pulling tighter every day. I felt it the most one afternoon in his office, standing close while showing him where to sign a proposal. Our hands brushed, and when I looked up, he was already watching me. The look in his eyes wasn't something I could label, half control, half hesitation. Then he said my name, soft, low. I should have stepped back when he leaned in close as if he wanted to kiss me. But I didn't. Not until a knock on the door snapped us apart. Mina's voice filtered in to remind him of his meeting, and just like that, everything went back to normal, or the version of normal we pretended it was. But after that, the lines blurred completely. He'd message after work, short and simple things like "get home safe" or "don't skip dinner." When he traveled, he called from hotel rooms, still in shirt sleeves, the city lights behind him. Once, he showed me the view from his window, saying it was missing something. Or someone. I laughed it off like it meant nothing, even though we both knew it did. A week before my birthday, I took a few days off to see my mom. The treatments had left her weaker, but her smile still found its way through. She said I looked thinner, and I told her it was because my boss liked scheduling meetings through lunch. She laughed, softly, carefully, and asked about work. I told her what I could. The usual office chaos, the gossip, the way my CEO had been acting differently lately. Kinder. More personal. She teased that maybe he liked me. I told her it wasn't like that, though I wasn't even sure myself anymore. Then she said, "I just want you to be happy, Jitae. To love and be loved." And for a second, I almost told her everything. But then she mentioned my father. Said he'd called. My stomach twisted the way it always did when his name came up. She said he wanted to check on her. I told her not to believe him. Not after everything he'd done. Gambling, lying, leaving us when we needed him most. She just smiled that tired smile and told me not to let hate take root. That it would only hurt me in the end. That night, I stayed beside her hospital bed until she fell asleep, brushing her hair back from her face. She woke up just before midnight, smiled faintly, and whispered, "Happy birthday." And in that small moment, I forgot about the chaos of work, about Taehan's messages, about everything else waiting for me outside that room. For the first time in a long time, I just wanted to stay there, where things were quiet and love didn't feel so complicated. The next day, when I got home, a small parcel sat by my door. Chocolate cake. My favorite kind. A note beside it, written in familiar, careful handwriting. From an admirer. At midnight run. I just stood there, staring at it, a laugh slipping out before I could stop it. It was ridiculous, really. The nation's most intimidating CEO, sneaking cakes to my apartment like some secret admirer out of a rom-com. Then my phone rang. It was him. "Happy birthday," he said when I picked up, a faint smile curving his lips. "You remembered?" "Of course. I make a point to remember important things," he replied, his tone softening. How's your mother? She's tired. But she smiled today, I said. We talked for a while. Not about work, not about reports or deadlines, just small things that somehow mattered. He asked about my plans, and I told him the truth. Eat cake. Sleep. He frowned, amused. That's not how birthdays work. Don't you have friends to go out with? Not really. Then I'll make sure you do next year, he said. And I laughed, a quiet, nervous laugh that felt lighter than it should have. After the call, I sat there, half a fork of cake in my hand, still smiling like a fool. Felt strange, warm, dangerous. Then, not even 30 minutes later, my doorbell rang. He was standing there. Lee Taehan, my boss, dressed down in a black coat that made him look unfairly good, holding a small box in one hand. Surprise, he said simply. I blinked. Aren't you supposed to be in Vietnam? I was, he said. Flew down for a few hours. It's your birthday. Inside the box was a watch, sleek, silver, understated. A reminder, he said. That time is worth spending on the right people. Something in my chest twisted. I let him in. We ended up on my couch, watching a movie neither of us paid attention to. Just talking. About work, the trip, and meaningless things that somehow didn't feel meaningless at all. He laughed once. A real, unguarded laugh. And it hit me that no one at the company had probably ever seen him like this. For a while, I forgot who he was. It was just two people, sharing space, sharing quiet. When he finally stood to leave, I walked him down to his car. The air outside was cool and smelled faintly of rain. Thank you, I said, for the cake. And the visit. You didn't have to. He looked at me for a moment that felt longer than it was. I did, he said. You do things for people you like. My heart stumbled over itself. Before I could think, before logic could stop me, I leaned forward and kissed him. Just once, soft and clumsy and real. Then I pulled back, mortified. Good night. But he caught my wrist, gentle but firm, and whispered my name, Ryan, and then he kissed me back. Slow, deliberate, like he'd been waiting for it. His hand came up to the back of my neck, grounding me, pulling me closer until the world blurred and all I could feel was the warmth of him. The kind that made time slip. When we finally pulled apart, his voice was low against my ear. Good night, Jitae. And then he was gone. I stood there long after his car disappeared, pulse wild, breath shaky. Every thought collapsing into one truth I could no longer ignore. I had crossed a line I could never uncross. And God help me, I didn't want to. A week after that night, life tried to return to normal or whatever passed for it. I was refilling the printer tray when Mina leaned over her desk like she was about to share state secrets. Jitae, you're still single, right? I didn't even look up. What's this about, Mina? She grinned. My friend's hosting a dinner. There's this guy, totally your type. Before I could respond, Jisoo chimed in from across the desks. You should go. It's sad watching you babysit the copy machine every Friday night. Their laughter filled the room just as Mr. Lee walked past. The air shifted instantly. Mina straightened like she'd been caught committing a crime. He didn't say a word, only nodded as he passed, but I felt it, the quiet burn of his gaze lingering a second too long. 10 minutes later, the intercom buzzed. Jitae. My office. Inside, he stood by his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled. There was nothing in his hands, no files, no reason I could see. Do you need anything, sir? I asked. He didn't answer, just watched me. Then he crossed the room, step by step, until my back hit the door. My breath caught as one hand landed beside my shoulder, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. Are you going on that date? He asked quietly, voice low and edged with something unsteady. I blinked. What? The one your colleagues were arranging. Oh, no, I wasn't planning to. He exhaled, slow, relief threading through the tension in his jaw. Good. Then, after a pause, softer, go out with me instead. I froze. Sir, that's not a good idea, he finished, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. I know. His eyes didn't waver. Still, I'm asking. He looked softer. The calm CEO cracked just enough for me to see something vulnerable beneath. Before I could stop myself, the words slipped out. You're cute when you're like this. He blinked, startled. Cute? That's a first. I laughed nervously. Guess you don't hear that often. Never. The silence that followed was taut, electric. Then he leaned in, and all the air seemed to disappear between us. His lips met mine. Sudden, urgent, Nothing like the careful patience he was known for. It was a clash, a confession, a spark that felt both wrong and absolutely right. His hand slid to the back of my neck, steadying me as my own heart raced wild against my ribs. I didn't even realize I'd kissed him back until the world blurred and my knees went weak. He pulled away first, breath unsteady. "Go!" he whispered, voice rough. Before I lose my mind completely, I nodded, face burning, and slipped out of his office before I did something even more reckless. When I reached my desk, Mina gave me a look. "You okay? You look flushed." "Just caught a cold?" I muttered, praying she couldn't hear the pounding in my chest. My phone buzzed, my father's name lighting up the screen. I didn't answer. Not today. Not after that kiss. Not after realizing how far I'd already fallen. Because I was falling. Fast. Mr. Lee had a way of caring that didn't demand or ask. It just was. Quiet, consistent, unshakable. On weekends, he'd message me before noon. Eat something proper. Not instant noodles again. Once, he even had lunch sent to my apartment. When I called to protest, he only said, "You work too hard. Let someone take care of you for once." That night, I sat staring at the unopened container for a long time before finally eating. The food tasted ordinary, but the gesture didn't. Felt strange, being looked after. Like my body didn't remember what that felt like. He told me to rest. Reminded me that I didn't always have to be strong. His way of affection wasn't grand. It was quiet command, discipline disguised as tenderness. And me? I was changing. Against my will, maybe, but I found myself waiting for his messages. Checking my phone between meetings. Wondering what city he was in when he texted "Miss Dinner" again. When he called from abroad, tired and low-voiced, we talk about nothing. The view from his hotel, the food, the silence. Sometimes we didn't even talk. We just stayed on the line until one of us fell asleep. Terrified me. How much I wanted that silence to never end. Because somewhere between the chaos of deadlines and hospital visits, I realized something dangerous. I was happy. Genuinely, quietly, painfully happy. And that, more than anything, was what scared me the most. So when he asked over dinner if I'd thought about our date, I didn't hesitate. I told him Saturday, and the faintest light caught in his eyes, quiet and satisfied. He arrived right on time. I dressed simply, jeans and a white shirt, but the way he looked at me at the door made me feel like I was something rare. His compliment was soft, almost shy, and for once, I didn't know where to look. He drove us out of the city, the skyline fading behind as the road opened into quieter air. When we finally stopped, I realized we weren't at a restaurant or hotel. It was a villa by the river, serene and half hidden by trees, its backyard unfurling into a view of the water bathed in evening light. From the trunk, he pulled out a picnic basket. I must have looked stunned because he smiled, that private, quiet kind of smile that never quite reached his lips. He'd planned this. Sandwiches, fruit, wine, simple, deliberate, like everything he did. Then a golden retriever came bounding toward me, tail wagging furiously. I laughed as it nearly knocked me over, and he told me her name was Choco, that she usually stayed with his sister, but he'd missed her. She liked me instantly, he noticed that too. We sat by the water, eating, talking, falling into the kind of conversation that makes hours disappear. He told me about studying abroad, the failed startup before his success, and the mistakes no one else ever got to hear about. Somewhere between the wine and the sunset, I realized he wasn't the man I worked for. Not here. "You're seeing a version of me no one else does," he said quietly. "I can tell. At work, I have to be the man who leads," he said. "But here I can just be Taehan." It was strange, hearing him say his own name like that, soft, almost uncertain. I told him I felt lucky to see that side of him, but I couldn't stop myself from asking why me and when he started liking me. He took his time before answering. "Since your internship," he said finally, "I've been curious about you." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I watched your interview tape," he said, his tone even but soft. "You were nervous but honest. And when we met again later, you were the only one who looked me in the eye. You didn't try to impress me, you just worked. That stayed with me." I let out a shaky laugh. "Come on. There's nothing impressive about that." He turned toward me fully then, his voice dropping lower. "You have this habit of making yourself small, like you're sorry for taking up space. But you're not ordinary, Jitae. You have to realize that you are unique in your own light." I swallowed hard, the words settling somewhere deep, too heavy and too gentle all at once. "I'm not special." He shook his head slowly. "You are. Even if you don't see it. You made me. A man who swore he'd never mix work and emotion. Completely lose my balance. When the words hit deeper than I expected. My eyes stung, and I hated how easily he could undo me. Han? I whispered, unsure what I was asking for. And when he leaned closer, I didn't stop him. His kiss was warm and sure, like a question he already knew the answer to. I kissed him back, hands trembling, mind empty except for the feel of him. The taste of wine, the press of his thumb against my jaw, the quiet rush of the river behind us. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. Tell me to stop, he whispered. I can't, I breathed. He smiled and kissed me again. The rest of the evening unfolded in soft fragments. Quiet laughter, the world shrinking to the sound of our breathing. When night settled, he took my hand and led me inside. The villa was warm, dimly lit, a cocoon of stillness. He poured wine, but neither of us drank. The next kiss came slower, deeper, a promise, not a question. His touch wasn't hurried. It was reverent, careful, like he was learning me by memory. Somewhere between breath and heartbeat, I stopped thinking about lines or consequences. For once, I just let myself want. When sleep finally found us, his arm rested around me, heartbeat steady against my back. The quiet proof that, for one night at least, the world had stood still. The morning after felt unreal. I woke to the slow rhythm of Han's heartbeat under my ear, sunlight spilling through the curtains. For a moment, I just lay there tracing small circles against his chest, trying to believe it wasn't a dream. He stirred eventually, voice still thick with sleep as he murmured, "You're up early." I smiled against his skin and told him I couldn't sleep. He cracked one eye open, a faint smirk ghosting his lips. Regretting it already? I shook my head, whispering that I was still trying to believe it happened. He gave a low laugh, soft, unguarded, and said, "It did." When I leaned up to kiss him, it was brief and clumsy, still heavy with sleep, but he caught my wrist before I could pull away and kissed me again. Slower this time. There was something dangerously easy about it, like we'd been doing this forever. He got up eventually, pulling on a shirt, and told me to stay put while he made breakfast. I groaned from under the blanket, teasing him about when CEOs started cooking. "Since now," he called back. The smell of coffee and toast filled the air, and for a moment, it felt like peace, ordinary, fragile, almost enough to make me believe I could stop running. Then the doorbell rang. Han frowned. "Could you get that?" Still half-dressed, I opened the door and froze. A woman stood there, elegant and effortless. I knew her face instantly, Han Yuna, the actress. Her eyes swept over me, cool and amused. "And you are?" "I work for Mr. Han," I stammered. "One of his secretaries." "Working here?" she asked sweetly, but the edge in her voice cut deep. Before I could answer, Han appeared. "Who is it?" Her face lit up. "Babe, since when do your employees work from home?" My stomach dropped. Han froze in the doorway, the smile he gave her thin and strained. "What are you doing here, Yuna?" She kissed his cheek. "I missed you. Thought I'd surprise you before my flight." He didn't kiss her back, but he didn't stop her either. His jaw was tight, his eyes flicking between us, but the silence said enough. I stepped back. "I should go," I managed. "Jitae," he started, but I was already moving, grabbing my phone, slipping into my shoes, my pulse ringing in my ears. I didn't wait for the elevator. I ran. By the time I got outside and into a cab, the tears had already started, hot and humiliating. He had a girlfriend, a public, perfect, beautiful girlfriend, and I'd been foolish enough to think I was special. "St. Mary's Hospital," I told the driver. Mom was awake when I arrived, her smile fading as soon as she saw me. "Jitae, what happened?" I sat beside her bed, my voice shaking. "He lied to me, Mom. I thought he was different." She brushed a hand through my hair. "Sometimes people don't mean to hurt us," she said softly. "They just don't know how to be honest." I leaned into her, heart breaking quietly in that sterile, lavender-scented room. And for the first time since meeting him, I wished I'd never swiped right. I didn't have time to fall apart. Mom's health was slipping faster than anyone expected, and the doctor's quiet tone told me what I refused to hear, that it was time to prepare. So I stayed at the hospital, sleeping in the stiff chair beside her bed, spooning soup she could barely swallow, pretending she'd get better if I just loved her enough. When she drifted off, I'd step out into the hallway to breathe. That's when I overheard two nurses talking. Something about the actress Han Yuna posting a picture with her boyfriend. He's some CEO, one said. They're probably getting married. The world tilted. So it was true. Han hadn't just lied, he'd done it effortlessly. And I'd been stupid enough to think I was the exception. Perfect together, the articles probably said. Perfect, public, beautiful. And I was just making the mistake. That night, I sat by Mom's side, holding her hand. Her skin felt colder than usual. Don't cry, she whispered. You'll be okay, my heart. I can't, I said, the words breaking apart. I don't know how to live without you. You already have, she murmured, smiling faintly. You've been living for both of us. She fell asleep soon after. By morning, she was gone. The world became soundless after that. I remember people speaking, touching my shoulder, offering condolences that dissolved before they reached me. The funeral came and went like a blurred film reel. White flowers, incense, faces I barely recognized. Mina showed up, hugging me tight, scolding me through tears. She said the office was in chaos, that Han had been calling my emergency contact nonstop, still listed under my mother's name. I didn't respond, couldn't. Then he came. Han stood by the doorway in a black suit, expression unreadable. For a second I thought he'd turn away, but he stepped forward, bowed deeply, and placed a white lily beside her coffin. When his eyes found mine, I looked away, because if I didn't, the grief would twist into something else entirely. Anger, longing, everything I was too tired to feel. And then, like some cruel encore, my father appeared. He cried the loudest, fake and sloppy, reeking of alcohol. When the crowd thinned, he sat beside me, still sniffling. So, he muttered, about the insurance payout. You'll share it, right? You're young. I can take care of it for you. I stared at him for a long time, my voice barely steady. I don't have parents anymore. He blinked. What? You died to me years ago, I said. I'm an orphan now. His face twisted. You ungrateful little... He grabbed my arm, hard enough to bruise. Then another hand was there, prying his fingers off me. Tian. His voice was cold, controlled, lethal. Let him go. My father sneered. Who the hell are you? Someone who doesn't tolerate vultures, Han said simply. Then softer, to me. Come on. He guided me out with a steady hand on my shoulder. My father's voice followed, angry and slurred, but it was fading now, like every other sound in that church. The next thing I knew, we were in Han's car. Neither of us spoke. The city moved slowly outside the window, blurred lights against the glass. My reflection looked like a stranger, hollow, pale, done. He didn't reach for me or ask anything, just drove. The silence between us was heavy, but for the first time in days, I didn't feel like I was drowning. When he finally stopped by the riverbank, he cut the engine but didn't move. I could feel his gaze, steady and uncertain. She's gone, I said quietly. I know, he whispered back. I'm sorry. The word shouldn't have meant anything, not after everything. But it did. Crack something open. I turned toward the window, tears slipping down soundlessly. He didn't touch me, just stayed there, silent, unmoving, until my sobs turned to shivers, until there was nothing left but the sound of the river and the faint rhythm of his breathing beside me. He drove me home in silence, the streetlights washing his face in gold and shadow. When he parked, he turned to me and said quietly, I'll come in. You shouldn't be alone. I shook my head. I'm fine. You're not. Please, Han, just go. He looked at me for a long moment, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Then he nodded. All right, but when you're ready, we need to talk. He pulled me into a hug before I could reply, his warmth cutting through the cold I hadn't realized I was carrying. I'm here, he whispered against my hair. Take every second you need. Call me if you want anything at all. Then he left. The next few days dissolved into stillness. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't bear to exist in a world that kept moving when mine had stopped. On the third morning, I made a decision. I typed my resignation letter, sent it, and shut my laptop. I was pretending to clean when the doorbell rang. Han was standing there, angry, raw, alive in a way I'd never seen. He brushed past me, voice sharp. What the hell was that email? You got it, I said flatly. Damn right I did. Who told you to disappear like that? I don't work for you anymore. Get out of my house. He stopped pacing. Not until you listen. Before I could argue, he was in front of me, kneeling, hands wrapped around mine. The sight startled me. The man everyone feared, now looking up at me like I was the only thing left holding him together. "Please," he said quietly. "Just let me explain." Something in his voice broke my defenses. "Fine," I whispered. "Talk." "She's not my fiancée. She never was." My breath caught. "Our families tried to arrange something years ago," he said. "It never happened. I'm out to my parents. They know who I am. Yuna knows too. She just can't let go. But there's nothing between us. There never was." I stared at him, searching his face for a lie and finding none. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because you left before I could," he said softly. His thumbs brushed my hands, grounding me. "Please, Jitae, believe me. You're the one I want. The only one. I love you." The words undid me. All the anger, grief, and loneliness cracked open at once. I started crying before I could stop, and he pulled me into his arms. "I was so hurt," I said against his chest. "She called you babe. I thought I lost you too. First my mom, then you." His voice was steady against my hair. "You didn't lose me. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." He kissed my temple, his breath warm against my skin. "You're not alone anymore." When he tilted my face toward him, his thumb brushed away my tears. The kiss that followed was soft, not hungry or desperate, just a promise. I let him hold me, let the weight of his presence remind me that I was still here. Weeks passed, and life slowly began to rebuild itself. I didn't go back to his company, no matter how often he asked. I needed to stand on my own, not beneath his shadow, but beside it. I found a new job. Han handled the mess my father left behind, the calls, the threats, until a restraining order silenced them for good. When I finally met my old colleagues again, I treated them to dinner. They tried to convince me to return, even promised to plead my case to the CEO. I laughed, hesitated, then finally admitted, "I'm dating him." The table fell silent. Then Mina squealed so loud the waiter nearly dropped his tray. "I knew it," she said. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. Really laughed. After dinner, I stepped outside, took a deep breath of the night air, and spotted Han waiting by his car. He smiled when he saw me and opened his arms. That smile still made my heart skip as I walked, then ran into his embrace, letting his warmth steady me. And in that moment, I was quietly, completely grateful for the night I'd swiped left and accidentally matched with my boss. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, tell us your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, keep daydreaming in BL.